Today's episode of Wine and Dime is sponsored by Rooted Planning Group, a fee-only financial planning firm that believes life is about events, supported by your dollars and cents. And we want to help you achieve your goals. Hop on over to www.rootedpg.com to learn more about the services. Every week, it's my goal to share financial information that helps you in both your life and Financial Vineyard. We hope it takes you from your roots to the journey of your vines and the influences in the air that have helped craft your delicious life. Like wine, life and finances have different palates that should be celebrated and not judged. Well, hello, podcast listeners, Wine and Dime listeners, I should say. Welcome today to the show. Liz, I almost said Tuttle, but it's actually Zemak. Liz Zemak. Liz joined our team in July of this year, July of 2023. Liz and I know each other for about 15 years. I think we figured out, or around that time frame. We worked at a company together in one of our previous lives. And Liz is going to be coming on the show today, excited to talk about, and I laughed when I said that for those of you that can't see us and are just listening, excited to talk about different financial sources that people can actually go to if they're interested in learning information other than from our wonderful financial podcast that we have, of course. Well, Liz, welcome to the show. Why don't you give the listeners just a little bit of background about you, since this is the first time you've been on Wine and Dime?
Yeah, so I'm very honored to be able to be on this podcast with you, Amy, and to have joined the team. So my brief background is a bunch of tax experience, mainly. So I prepared tax returns for just about 10 years. And then I decided I loved building client relationships and helping people outside of just a tax planning. So I made the jump and went right into some financial planning, relationship management, and have been pursuing different certifications that I need in order to better serve clients and provide good information. So I had the opportunity to join Amy and the team here at Rooted Planning Group, and I was so thrilled to be able to have that opportunity.
Well, that goes both ways, Liz. And I don't think you're not much of a wine drinker very much, are you?
No, well, I do love wine, but I preferred gin and tonic is actually my one of my favorites. But I do like wine, but if I'm going to drink it, it's got to be really dry and red. So
you're a red wine too. I just had a really good, Brent and I went wine tasting with some friends of ours on Saturday. After we dropped Carrie off at the airport, we headed up to Geneva. We picked them up in Big Flats and then headed up to Geneva. And we went to two wineries, two of my favorites. One is called Billsborough, and they had a really good, it's a rosé, but it has the flavor of a Cab Sauv and a Cab Franc grape. So they did a blend on their rosé, which had so much body and so much taste to it. So I was really shocked by it. And then we headed down to Prignan, which is also one of our favorite wineries. And I don't, usually fauches in this area are a lot more light bodied than they are out in Oregon. Well, we were talking to the winemaker, Tom, and owner of Prignan when we were there, and he said that he was real thrilled about the fauche this time. In fact, I think he used the word sexy, and I'm like, okay, I got to taste this because it's going to describe a wine that way. And we were shocked. So he's got a secret sauce going because in the past it's been fine, like it's been okay. But this was a really good fauche. And again, unusual for our area of Finger Lakes. So we're very fortunate to have those kinds of resources in our area. And I picked up, I'll just say, a little bit of wine for our winter voyage since
that's good.
Heading south. Yeah, you can't really find New York wine down in Florida. So I have to stock up on it before we head south. And we also have some friends down there that ask us to bring some with us. So we are stocking up. I think we're pretty much stocked up at this point in time and excited to be thinking about that warmer weather.
That's
So
good.
what does that have to do with financial information that people might want to be looking at for? Well, number one, there's some bargains out there if you want to buy in volume, right? So that's, I guess, my joke and my connection between this show of Wine and Dime. But in all seriousness, if we get to the topic, we had in our asking for a friend section, we had somebody write in and ask, what were the favorite sources of financial information that we turn to? And as a team, we sort of brainstormed on this and said, well, what is everybody utilizing? And I thought this would be a really good podcast to talk about not only what our team came up with, but perhaps why we like listening to it. So as people are thinking about, well, how much information can I absorb in any one given day? Where do I want to pick for resources? Maybe this list and our conversation will kind of help direct them just a little bit as to which way they want to go. Ironically, all of us came up with, or most of us came up with the Morning Brew. Now they have both a newsletter and a podcast. So, and the podcast and newsletter go very close hand in hand. So if you don't have time to read the newsletter, you could always listen to the podcast while you're in the car, where you're getting ready in the morning or whatever. But we really like that because it's digestible and you can explore from, what they happen to post in there. What are some of your favorites, Liz?
Yeah. So I personally like the Morning Brew, listening to that on my drive in the morning. I really like them because they kind of hit those top stories, right? And kind of give you, as you said, digestible pieces of information, and then you can explore from there. So a couple of the other ones, the top, if you're looking for news related financial information, the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Bloomberg, and Yahoo Finance are some of the top that we like to look at. Amy, it makes me think of your experience at Prejean Winery. I think, like wine, you have to try different things and find what you like to read and what is presented in a way that you prefer and that you like. So those are some of the ones that our team in particular really likes. I think mainly just the quality of the content that they produce. It's consistently good. They also really, hit those top stories, the things that are really impacting. I think they also present the information in a way that's easy to read. So, it's fine to read a bunch of financial information, but if it's too heady or if it's too, advanced, you aren't going to take a whole lot from it. So finding those resources, like we mentioned, that really present it in a way that's easy for you to understand, I think is important.
Yeah. And I try to think back, like what did when I first started in this profession, I certainly didn't have the knowledge that I have now, right? I mean, that was 29 years ago. And so what were some of the things? I mean, it was a very different time back then too. So my available resources were very different than my current resources. And the Wall Street Journal, I didn't have the digital form, but I did read that a lot. And, from a standpoint of really trying to understand what was going on in the financial world. And of course, today you can get the digital version and read just the things that are of interest to you. But I also liked it because there was usually like things of interest to me. Like, it wasn't just financial, and there were opinions. And for me personally, one of the other reasons that I like the Morning Brew show is because they actually sort of quasi debate sometimes, so you'll have two different opinions on things. And I like to do that. I like to see that. I like to see what different opinions are on these topics, even though it can seem like information overload sometimes. I like to see those different angles of opinions to say, well, that wasn't the way I thought about it, but this is the way, somebody else thought about it. Let me sort of process that and maybe do some research on that. How about when you first started out? Think, what did you read that was, that helped kind of direct you? Because I think our tastes change, over time. But what did you start out reading? Do you recall?
Yeah. So and it's still one of my favorites today, Amy, is a website called The Balance. I really love that. If I need to break something down for someone, and like you said, go back to the beginning and think about, oh gosh, I've been dealing with this subject for 15 years, going back to the beginning, sometimes even with my husband trying to explain a situation to him, or he's got a financial question, and going back to the basics. I think The Balance does a really good job of that. There's a lot of financial literacy content out there. So if there are, questions you have or types of accounts that are being offered to you at work or benefits that you're not sure about, obviously you can, email anyone on our team. But also, if you look through The Balance, they have a lot of really good content out there. The other one that I find myself going and looking at too is NerdWallet. That's kind of a popular one in our world. But they also have some really good information out there. So I like those two are my favorites.
I know I've written some articles actually for NerdWallet. I know there's a few times I guess been quoted in that particular. There's a ton of stuff on that. Yahoo Finance is another one, as you mentioned. There's been a couple articles that, like I'll respond to certain questions from reporters and then they'll quote me. And I know NerdWallet and Yahoo are a couple. The Balance I don't think I've had anything on. But yeah, those are two that, they go to industry professionals and, ask questions a lot of times. So you're really getting different views, I think, even within there. And I guess we keep coming back to that. It's having those varying views that I think are really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I know another one I think that I've been quoted on has been NASDAQ. So the NASDAQ has written, articles as well. People know the NASDAQ is an index fund or an index, that stocks are listed on, but there's actually a website that you can go and read articles and get additional information. And one that a lot of people don't think of, but one that I think is really good is FINRA.org. FINRA.org is where brokers often will get registered, or as IARs, we have to get registered on that website, even though our oversight is with the SEC. But they have really good consumer education out there. So, and it's factual information. I mean, like, talk about having the double, triple, quadruple checked information out there. And they write it in a way, I think, that is for somebody who might know a little, but is learning, is in their growth path. So absolutely. I think that's another great website that people could consider. And I'm going to plug for a second. I'm going to plug our website, rootedpg.com, because we have a ton of consumer information out there and articles out there that are just on our website for you to read, dig into, and learn a little bit more about. So I had to put that plug in, Liz. And I know you were about to say something. I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No, you're fine. So one of the other resources I did want to make sure that I mentioned, Becky on our team has been doing a lot of work around student loan information. And one that she mentioned she really loves is Student Loan Planner. So that's definitely one to check out if student loans are either something you're thinking about or you've got student loans. That's a really great resource as well.
Yeah, we've got some good calculators out there, some good information around student loans. And Lord knows right now there's a lot of misunderstandings and trying to get a handle on what exactly is going on with student loans and the student loan repayment plans right now.
Yes.
So hopefully we gave you some really good resources that you can turn to. And before we jump off this podcast, I do want to just take a quick second, Liz. You've been writing an article for us on a monthly basis now. Your wealth is your first health. Liz has an extraordinary background in has researched and has actually done some of her own bodybuilding and health training, I would say, in her past. And so there's a lot of connections between financial health and your personal health and some of the habits that people can utilize. Any thoughts or quick tips that you would come up with, or anything that you'd like to share just in closing to the listeners around that topic?
Sure. Yes. So I have been writing, I'm on my third article for our newsletter. So each month I just kind of think of a different topic that might be of interest. I try and relate it to some, the season, but I think one of the biggest connections for me, and something that I learned through bodybuilding really, but also doing personal training and nutrition education for people, is really learning that self-control and discipline and consistency and taking care of yourself, your health. To me, that relates into your wealth, to where you can really develop those healthy habits, right? We talk about a spending plan sometimes, and that's not always the most fun thing to talk about, right? But what are ways that you can practice self-control and discipline to help reach your goals, right? We've definitely had people that have said, oh, I want to travel, but I could never do that. And when we run the numbers and we go through it, we're able to show them, if you make these slight changes, sometimes they're bigger changes, but if you make some slight changes on that day-to-day basis, maybe you're skipping that coffee every day or going out to eat, several times a week, just to save up so you can reach that goal. Maybe it's not travel, maybe it's something else, but it's really setting that goal and then figuring out what you have to do to get there. Maybe you have to generate some more income. But those two, to me, that's the most obvious way to me that they're interlinked, is really practicing that self-control and discipline, setting that goal and then doing the work consistently to get you to where you want to be.
And I think that word consistently is the tough one, right? Whether it's something to do with your health, fitness, or your finances, consistency that's why we say automate things, because it by nature creates consistency.
Yes.
Well, Liz, thank you so much for being on today's podcast. We're so glad to have you part of our team. And we thank you to everybody for listening to the show today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned. We're going to have Liz back on for sure. We would love it if you would share this with your friends, rate us on iTunes so that more people like you can find us. And a special shout out to TJ Mann at Mann Media. We are so appreciative of all the fixes of the faux pas that happen during the recording of this podcast. When you do your production, you take them out. Thank you so much, and we hope you all have a great day.
And that will about do it for today's episode of Wine and Dime. You can contact Amy through the website www.rootedpg.com or amy@rootedpg.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram @RootedPG for the latest news. And if you have any questions, comments, or topics you would like to hear about, feel free to let us know. And don't forget to rate and subscribe the show wherever you get your podcasts. And again, thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next time.